So great to see you today, and a quick shout out and hello to those that are watching online, those that are worshiping in our TC Commons experience this morning. Let me pitch a question out to you today as we get going. Have you ever started something and then got part of the way through it and regretted that you ever started it? You're like, what in the world did I just get myself into? I had one of those moments 3 months ago. I got the urge to clean out my garage, and some of you know exactly where this story's going. And I kind of anticipated going into it that it would take me about 4 hours to clean it out and to organize it. And I was at hour 8, and I was just toast. I was exhausted, and I was like, how in the world am I going to get through this project? And so I decided, hey, I'll do it tomorrow. And so I tapped out for the day. And then the next day I woke up and hit a wall, right? And 3 months later, it's still where it was when if not worse than it was when I left it 3 months ago. That's my garage. In my garage, I had to invest some time and some energy in it to kind of navigate through that. But what do we do when it costs us money instead? Have you ever heard about the NASA orbiter that was lost in space? Have you ever heard of that? $327 million spacecraft NASA lost in 1999. Can you imagine? Here's what happened. They had the smartest scientists and stuff that were working together on the project, and they made one small mistake. One team of scientists were using inches, and the other team of scientists were using centimeters. One little math mistake cost them $327 million. Let me correct that. It cost you $327 million. Man, when they lost that. One mistake just ends up snowballing into a total disaster. And once they actually realized the mistake at that point, it was too late for them to be able to do anything about it. And I think sometimes in life, it can be that way. We make one decision, and that decision turns into two, that turns into 3 decisions. And before we even realize it, we find ourselves in the middle of this complete mess, and we're asking ourselves, why did I get myself into this? And here's the weight of that question today, is that there's probably some of you that find yourself living in the midst of that tension right now. You feel stuck in a place that you never thought you would ever be. You've done everything that you know to try to fix it, to try to change it. You've even tried to power through the situation, but nothing has ever changed. And I don't know if you've ever found yourself in that place in an area of your life. If so, and if you're there today, I got good news, and that is, as we navigate through this series, The Prodigal, today specifically, we're going to look at a segment of the younger son's story that Jesus uses to give us clarity on how to get unstuck in that area of our life. And I think at the end of the day today, you're going to find what the Lord has for us today to be super helpful for any time you find yourself in a season where you feel like you're hitting rock bottom. And speaking of rock bottom, that's what I've entitled today's message. Essentially, it's how do we get out of rock bottom in our life. And if you got your Bible or smartphone, you can kind of head over to Luke chapter 15. We're going to be in verses 14 through 19 today. Well, before we jump into this part of the younger son's story today, I want us to back away like we did last week and remind ourselves of the bigger picture, right? So Jesus is telling the story, the prodigal son's story, a story about a father and his two sons. And the younger son is lost in rebellion. The older son is lost in self-righteousness. And what both sons end up discovering along the way is that they both need the Father's grace. And so Jesus is taking a moment and he's sharing this story, and he shares it along with two other stories before it. And there's two groups of people where Jesus is sharing the story. There's the religious group of people, and these people that are present, that are there, they kind of have the mindset of, hey, we're good with God, right? We don't need to do anything else. We are good. And then you've got the group of people that are the sinners, and those individuals have this mindset of there's nothing that we could possibly do to be good with God. And Jesus tells this story as a way to tell both groups of people that they're both wrong. And so Luke 15 is three stories that Jesus tells these two groups of people. And essentially what Jesus is trying to help these two groups understand is that there's nothing that God won't do to reach lost people. What they don't realize is that they're both lost and that they're going to find grace in the Father. And so last week we looked at the younger son, and what does he do? He's chasing after just happiness and fulfillment in life. We talked about last week about empty promises and how there's things that are in our life, these worldly promises, that they offer all of this stuff, but the closer that we get to it, we discover it's a mirage, right? Like it's not what we thought it was going to be. And so this younger son goes to his dad and he asks for his inheritance early, and he leaves. And he goes and he's pursuing this worldly happiness and fulfillment. And we talked about last week about when we do that in life, that when we chase empty promises, that when we get to a place where we realize that they're not producing what they promised they would, that we experience disappointment. We experience a sense of emptiness when we find ourselves there. And what we talked about last week is that it's not just the disappointment that we need to pay attention to, that when we find ourselves in that place of emptiness, that it's also an invitation from God to something greater. And today what we're going to do is we're going to discover what it looks like in our life when we don't respond to this invitation. When we find ourselves in a season that feels empty and God is inviting us to greater purpose in our life and we refuse the invitation, today we're going to see what ends up happening in our life when we do that. And so we look at verse 14, and it says that about the time that his money ran out, speaking of the younger son, right? He went to the father, got his inheritance. He's got all this money. He's pursuing, whatever it is, wealth, fame, fortune, whatever it is. He's pursuing that. And at some point along the way, money runs out. But not just the money running out. Like, have you ever noticed in life, like you can make one stupid decision, but it always ends up getting compounded by other decisions that we never would have intentionally made. Some of them aren't even our decisions. It's just kind of life and the ripple effect of life that just takes us from this one dumb decision to something way worse. And that's what this son is experiencing. So he runs out of the money, and then, to make matters even worse, he runs out of money and a great famine sweeps over the land. And then he's beginning to starve. It's kind of like this. It's like you get yourself into debt, you end up maxing out your credit card, and then the next next day your engine blows in your car, right? It's like you make one bad decision, but it just gets worse. Or maybe you're a college student today and you were kind of just being relaxed with classes and were sleeping in and all that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden you get a letter in the mail that says because of your GPA, like your financial aid is about to be, taken back, right? Or maybe you lose your job and you do something that causes you to lose your job, and then the next day rent is due, and you just kind of find yourself in this season of life where everything seems to be compounding on itself. And that's where this son is in the story. The son finds himself, he's chasing after happiness, and now he's broke. Now famine hits, he's starving, and so what does he do? The Bible says, Jesus says that he ends up persuading a local farmer to hire him. And the man sent him into fields to feed the pigs. Now you're thinking, what a big deal, like initiative, right? The guy's showing initiative. He's going and getting a job. But here's what you can't miss in the story is that this is a Jewish people that Jesus is talking to, and in their culture, in their day, they didn't have anything to do with pigs. Like pigs were considered an unclean animal. And so, like in this story, this would have created so much tension where Jesus is telling this story, because all these people would have been listening and they would have been thinking through their mind, the father's going to disown him. The father's going to want nothing. The whole family's going to just cast him away. And they're thinking that because that is what culture would have done in those days. And so what ends up happening for this kid is he ends up going and he's feeding the pigs. And then watch what happens. The next verse says that the young man then becomes so hungry. So he's got the worst job imaginable. Right? He's in the middle of a famine. He's starving to death, even to the point where the food that he's feeding to the pigs began to look good to him. And then it says, but no one gave him anything. And I think this right here is a snapshot of life sometimes. I think it's a snapshot because what we tend to do in life is we begin to pursue things that we think are going to make us happy, and for a season, they're fun. For a season, we have a good time and we're enjoying life, but it always ends up leaving us empty and broken and starving. And so we end up settling for slop. We end up making stupid decisions like how in the world are we getting ourselves into this place kind of decisions until at some point along the way we find ourselves alone. Friend, all of us have felt that in one area or another in our life. That aloneness, that place where our decisions have compounded and gotten worse and worse and worse is a place that we would call rock bottom. It's a place where God has been extending this invitation of a different kind of life and a different direction in life, but instead of us choosing purpose, we've chosen pleasure, and now the pleasure has got us into a really bad and dangerous place. We've all been there. Nobody likes rock bottom. But what we often don't realize is that there is a blessing at rock bottom that we only experience when we hit it. And this is the blessing that's at rock bottom. It's that the only way left to look is up. Like, I don't know about you, but something that stresses me out in life sometimes is options. Like, God, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? And so many times in life, when we're pursuing our own pleasures, we're going in all these different directions. But when we finally get to a place where we hit rock bottom, we quit looking in those directions, and the only place that we can look is up. And that's what ends up happening in this next verse, is that this young man hits rock bottom, and Jesus says that he finally comes to his senses. That he says to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. You see, here's what I know about rock bottom, is that it's often where God opens our eyes to what we refused to see before. This is my story. 1 month before I turned 21 years old, I was a fraternity guy that was chasing after a lot of worldly promises that continually left me empty. I was chasing after influence, and I was chasing after popularity, and I was chasing after like all these things, but what I kept finding is that every choice and every pursuit kept leaving me more empty and more broken, until January 15th, 1997, when the Lord helped me get to a place of rock bottom where I came to my senses. And maybe there's some of you that are here today, and you can identify with that. That you've walked into this place today, and there's such a weight that has been on you, and I don't know what area of your life that you've been wrestling with, but you know good and well that the decisions that you've been making, even though you've been trying to fix it, keep digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper, and you found yourself lately looking in the mirror and wondering, like, how did I get here? Like, this isn't who I thought I would be at this stage in my life. Like, for some of you, you've been saying, like, what started out as fun in life now feels like a prison in my life. And friend, I want to let you in on a secret today. And the secret is this, is that realization shows you the mess. Like, coming to your senses shows you the mess, but it doesn't move you out of it. And some of you have been wondering why. Like, you have seen the issues in your life. You've even regretted the decisions and the directions that you've gone. Like, some of you have even asked the Lord to forgive you of the choices and the decisions that you've made. But every time you do that, nothing ever changes. And because nothing ever changes, you find yourself in this place in life where you begin to lose hope, a place of despair, maybe even a place where you begin to doubt whether God is really who He says He is. Do you know why we find ourselves in that place in life? Listen, it's a place that all of us have been in at one time or another in some area of our life. But this is the reason why we do everything we know to do and nothing seems to ever change. It's because realization without a return to the Father leaves us stuck at the bottom. Realization is not enough to change our life. It's the return that changes it. And so many of us have this all day long. Some of you have been in the pit that you're in right now for 10 years, and you keep having this realization of is my life continually going in the direction that it's going? And the reason why you're stuck there is because you've missed out on one important component, and that's the return part. And Jesus, he knew this was such a big deal in our faith journey, and that's why he puts this next verse in the passage, in the story. He says, this is what the young son says: I'm going to go home to my father. The son doesn't say, I'm just realizing that my life's in a bad spot. The son's not regretting the bad spot. He's returning. He doesn't say, like I'm going to figure this out at some point along the way. He doesn't say, like, I'll do better next time. He doesn't say, I'm going to clean myself up first, and then I'll go back to the father. He just says, I'm going home. And friend, that's where this son's story takes a turn for the better. And friend, I've got good news for you. If you find yourself at rock bottom and the heaviness and the emptiness that you've been navigating in that season or in that area of your life, I have good news for you today, and it's that Jesus has provided a way, and Jesus tells what that way is through the very words of this son. Through his words, he shows us how to turn our story around, and I want to show you that. Here's what the son says next. He says, I'm going to go home to my father. Friend, this part right here of what the son says is one of three steps that you and I have to take in our life if we're going to return back to the Father. The second thing that he says is that it's this awareness that I've sinned. I've sinned against you, and I've sinned against heaven. And friend, that's the second step. And the third one is that he recognizes, he comes to this place, just take me as a hired servant. Like this is a kid who is laying down a title in order to just be a hired servant at his father's house. Friend, Jesus uses this story to give you and I a roadmap to not just get stuck on realization, but to learn how to return back to the Father. And this is what it looks like in our life. The first thing that we've got to do, the first step, and we got to have all three of these for us to change things in our life, is we've got to come to a place of desperation. Desperation says, I can't stay here anymore. I've been here too long. I've experienced too much loss and too much hurt and too much emptiness in my life. You see, desperation, we get desperate when the pain of staying the same, that it hurts more than the pain of us changing. And the problem is so many times we want change in our life, but we never really get to that place. We never get to this place of desperation where we cannot stay the way we are. The second thing that we've got to do, the second step in our life, is we got to have humility. Humility says, I can't fix this. So not only am I not staying where I'm at, but I can't fix the mess that I've created in my own life. And then the third thing, and this is the one that so many times in our life we don't do, we miss out on. Maybe we get the first step, maybe we get the second step, but we got to have all three of these steps for us to effectively return and change things in our life. The third one is we got to have some resolve. See, resolve says that I'll do whatever it takes to change my life. Resolve is a powerful word because it really mashes two kind of components in life. One is the courage to go a different direction in my life, but the other one is grit. Like, it's one thing to have courage to make a decision to go a different direction. It's a whole nother thing to have grit, that whenever we begin to experience adversity in our life, that we continue to persevere through the adversity. Like, I find it so interesting, and I've fallen in this kind of trap myself with my kids, where I've talked to them about the importance of adversity and perseverance and pushing through, whether it's been sports or academics or whatever it is, but yet I've not done that in my own life. Like, how many times do we post on social media about our football team or sports team? The importance of them kind of pushing through adversity in the season and in whatever area that they're struggling in. But yet you and I don't do that in our own lives, especially our spiritual lives. And friend, you and I will never get unstuck. We'll never get out of rock bottom if we aren't willing to lean into adversity. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you straight this morning, okay? It's not rock bottom that keeps you stuck. It's refusing to take the necessary steps to get out. Stop complaining about the circumstances, and I'm not downplaying the circumstances. I'm not saying they're not hurtful. I'm not saying they're not inconvenient. I'm not saying you haven't been done wrong. But what I am saying is that a change in circumstances aren't going to fix it. Desperation and humility and resolve will get you back to the place that fixes it, which is the Father. Friend, that's what I experienced in my life. I had to walk all three of those things out in my own life. When I came to my senses on January 15th, 1997, coming to my senses, the realization of where my life had gotten to was just the beginning of the process for me. You see, I had to lean into desperation in that season of my life because I had been all in with the world, and now I was so desperate for things to change in my life that I was willing to go all in for God. And I began to cut out things in my life that would lead me away from the Father rather than to the Father. That I began to prioritize school, work, and church. Friend, I was in church every time they would open the doors because I had to keep walking towards the Father because I knew if I didn't, I'd get distracted. I had to lean into a season of humility. For me, as a 21-year-old, I joined a small group. We got Groups Expo that's happening out there. I had to join a small group, and the awkwardness of a 21-year-old joining a small group with a bunch of older men that in my mind back then, they were old. And now I'm that old guy, but it was in that group. In a group that was studying a book that most of us guys would run 100 miles from, Healing from Damaged Emotions. Like, guys, we're like, we don't want anything to do with our emotions. Like we're going to push those out, right? But I had to be humble. And I leaned into that group, and those men became a catalyst for my life. But then I had to have some resolve. I had to have some resolve in a season where I had so many people saying, this is never going to last. It's not going to last. And so I made this 12-month commitment to God that I was going to focus on Him and Him only. And friend, it was in those 3 steps in my life that became a catalyst that I'm far from perfect today, far from perfect. But 28 years later, I've been married for 26 years. I have 3 kids that are all serving the Lord. I have a beautiful daughter in love that Andrea and I almost probably love her more than we love our 3 kids. I have a daughter that led worship for the first time this morning. And God's using me to make a difference in the lives of others. Friend, I got a question for you today. Are you stuck on rock bottom? Are you stuck in your marriage, stuck in your finances, stuck in your career? Are you stuck in your faith? Like if you had this awareness of who God is, but you've been living life your way and making your own decisions, and now you find yourself at this place where you just don't like the life that it has produced. Friend, we all hit rock bottom in our life, all of us. And we hit rock bottom in different ways. The question isn't, are we going to hit rock bottom? The question is when we do, what are we going to do when we get there? I want to share this reality to you if you find yourself at rock bottom today. And my hope is that you find hope in this reality, because it's the reality I've experienced in my own life. The rock bottom can be the pit that you stay in, or it can be the platform that God launches you from. Today doesn't have to be the end of your story. It could be the beginning of a new chapter, but it doesn't stop at realization. It starts at return.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us. If you enjoyed today's message, go ahead and subscribe, because there's content like this every single week. And if it spoke to you in any way, make sure you share it with a friend, because you never know whose life you can change with just one simple share. Listen, we hope to see your face in the place this Sunday. Go ahead and check out our website for our service times at transformtlh.com, and we hope to see you soon.